What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Brooks Hollan. Brooks is that guy who got so close to glory so many times, from being a near perfect student to almost making the Olympic swim team to almost becoming a Navy SEAL. Brooks was somebody who almost made it happen for himself. So what does that look like now for him? For years, it would paralyze him and stop him from truly putting himself out there and fully embracing who he is as a person and now a coach. You see, Brooks now helps people break free of this imposter syndrome idea. He helps people open up and truly embrace their purpose so they can take that and make that their living. He's helped some of the biggest names in the industry, and now he is doing it on a large scale. And I think you guys are absolutely going to love this episode. It's a great tale of overcoming. It's a great tale of love and relationship, and it is truly a guidebook for you to open up and stop being afraid of how the world is judging you and start living for yourself. Brooks has now found service to purpose, and he is helping you break free to live your best life in work, out of work, in your relationships, and to truly level up in all areas, which is obviously a great fit for this podcast. And I'm also excited to announce that it's a great fit for Growth Now Movement Live as well. I'm proud to announce Brooks Hollan as one of the keynote speakers at Growth Now Movement Live. He's absolutely going to rock the stage, and he's going to change your life. So head over to gnmlive.com, use the code Brooks for a discount, and we can't wait to see you guys there. This is going to be a life-changing event, and you'll hear in this episode why Brooks was added to this incredible speaker lineup. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Brooks Hollan. Brooks, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a long time coming for sure. I think the first time we spoke was like a year and a half ago. And I remember in that conversation and hearing parts of your story, I'm like, wow, my audience needs to hear this, because there's a lot of moments in your life that I think people kind of go through in different ways, and it stops them from really going after their purpose and serving their tribe or whatever you want to call it. And so I'm interested in sharing. But why don't we take a moment now and talk about who's Brooks today, and then we'll unpack how you got there.
Brooks today is comfortable in his own skin.
I love that.
And that seems like such a simple thing, but like a journey to get there.
Yeah. And from what I know, and I don't know if I know all the intricate details, but from what I know, it really was a journey for you. And this is not saying, like, if people know who you are, like, you're insanely in shape. You have done amazing things, which we'll get to. And yet you weren't comfortable with who you were. And so I want to get into a little bit about some of the things you've done in the past, which most people would look at and go, wow, that's amazing. And you just kind of never allowed it to shine. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to being a kid. I mean, I started swimming competitively when I was 6 years old. I'd been in the pool for 2 weeks, and I won the breaststroke event at my first swim meet. I was doing 2-a-days before I was 7. I was ranked 4th in the country and working with my first Olympic swim coach at age 10. I went on to work with Michael Phelps's coach for 3.5 years. I swam at the Naval Academy. I qualified for NCAAs. I qualified for Olympic trials. And, after the Naval Academy, I went out to SEAL training to go be a Navy SEAL, and was just having a blast, was kicking ass. And then I got dropped 13 days till graduation. And that really sent me in like a 2-decade tailspin.
Wow. Well, let's talk about that for a second. Obviously, I've had Navy SEALs on the show, and that is just a whole nother level. And to even get that close to graduation, like, I would look at it and be like, yo, I was much tougher than a majority of the world. You're looking at it as this massive failure. So what was going on in your head that allowed you to kind of tell yourself that?
Well, I think it was even before then, because that was the thing. Like, even when I was ranked, fourth in the country at 10, I couldn't make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich right.
Mm.
So it's like I was operating at this extremely high level in an area of my life, but then I was also just raised with like lots of attention to detail. Like as a kid, you go to the refrigerator where there's got the little ice maker and the water on the freezer door. There's a little piece of paper that said 99% is not good enough, because if it was, this many planes would crash a day, the power would be out this many minutes a day, FedEx would lose this many packages a day, doctors would amputate this many wrong limbs a day. It was just like a whole list of stuff of like what happens if you only give 99%. And I get the intention behind that, but when you're like 8, 9, 10 through like 18, it can kind of be a lot.
Yeah. Now, is this coming from your parents? Like,
yeah, it's just, and it was my dad, and we can get into more of that later. But yeah, there was just this, and I get where it was coming from, but it was just feedback. But it's like at that age, like you start taking it as like, dude, I can't do anything right, because like everything that I didn't do 100% was pointed out.
Mm. So you obviously have this father that I assume, since you're taking it at such a literal level, you looked up to him, or still, I'm not sure where he's at. Or
oh yeah, I mean, as a guy, like that was the approval that I wanted more than anything.
Yeah. So when you're taking these things in at such a young age, what were you saying to yourself in those moments, and was it openly discussed, or were you just kind of holding these in?
I think I want to say as a kid, I took it with a grain of salt. Like I took it in stride, just like, yeah, my dad's strict, like whatever, and I do remember there was times like I remember like crying to my mom, like just make him stop. I mean, I was getting up at 4:30, 4:45 in the morning, going to a morning swim practice, going to school all day, back in the pool with dry land for 2.5 to 3 hours. I wasn't getting home until 8:30 at night, and I'm just beat.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to like make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and just like look at the newspaper, just shut my head off. And it's like, I didn't do it efficiently because I opened the refrigerator door twice and let cold air out or something. It's just like,
wow. I couldn't even imagine. I mean, did you feel like you had to like tiptoe around? Like, was that like a lot of your life, or just you felt like I could do everything I could possibly do and it just wasn't enough?
Like on eggshells.
Yeah.
I mean, like, remember the old school remote controls where you didn't have like all the fancy buttons, but there was like the last button so you could see like the last channel that you were on?
Yeah.
So it's like my parents would go out, like I would literally, because I got busted with that, like I was watching like Beavis and Butthead or something on MTV. And so like it would get to the point where like even they'd be gone, like I wouldn't sit on the chair, like I'd sit on the floor, because it's like they would feel for body heat, like if I was watching the television. And so it's like I'd hear the garage door and I'd like put in like 2 news channels, right? I would turn the TV on. I would see the 2 channels that were going between. So maybe it was like ESPN and the news. And then when I hear the door, I'd go to those 2 channels real quick, make sure it's on the right channel, like I mean, that's what it was like for a lot of childhood.
Jeez. I grew up in a sense that I could do nothing wrong. Like the idea I had was a great idea. My parents thought I was great, even though I wasn't actually the top at anything. I was a terrible student. I wasn't very good at sports. Like, it's a completely different world. So it's hard for me to wrap my head around this type of process. But I do understand that we become adults in a way that is formed as children. So
totally. And here's the thing, and like my parents, and I think it's like my parents were very loving. It was just that like, and I think that's the thing. I've encountered so many people that had parents like that.
Mm.
Like they only want the best for you, but they're like, hey, you got a 97 on the test. Like, why didn't you get 100? And it's just like, you're like, oh, I mean, I've seen it with a lot of athletes. I've seen it with a lot of my friends, people I've met that went to Ivy League schools, like through coaching, come across a lot of people where, and it's hard because people don't get it. Like, they're like, you went to Harvard. Like, what do you have to complain about? And you're like, well, it's that constant. Yeah, because I was at Harvard, but I was only getting 92s instead of 100s.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. And so how did that affect you going forward? Like, I think there's 2 routes you could have taken, right? Like, you could have gone the complete opposite direction when you separated and became an adult and started to make your own choices and lived on your own. And then you also could have stayed in that track of like, nothing's good enough. So what did you do going forward to really start to begin this life? Because look, doing what you did as an adult in the Olympic trials and then going into Navy SEAL training, like that's no joke. So what were you doing, going forward, and how did that stop you, do you think, from reaching your dreams?
Yeah. So here's and I wouldn't say it's stopping reaching. It's just what I see now is I see the gift in all of it. So so after high school, I graduated high school, and 10 days later I was gone. Like I took off to the Naval Academy, and I was just like, I felt like I'd graduated boot camp.
Mm.
And like sometimes, yeah, people will go back to their boot, but it's like, dude, I'm out of boot camp. I'm gone. So I took off for the Naval, I graduated high school 10 days later, took off for the Naval Academy. And I looked at it like, I've got a roof over my head. I got 3 meals a day, and I got a job when I get out after. Like, I'm self-sufficient now.
Yeah.
That was what was in my head. So, I came home for, Christmas before swim training. My 4 years at the academy, was home maybe a little bit in the summer. But then really after I graduated the Naval Academy and I took off for California for SEAL training, I didn't really look back.
Mm.
And I think that's when everything really, once I got dropped from SEAL training, like I think logically I took everything my dad said with a grain of salt. But then once I got dropped from SEAL training, it was just like a tidal wave.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what do you mean by tidal wave?
It was just like a tidal wave of like all that stuff. Maybe he was right, because, didn't have the attention to detail or wasn't good enough. Like, because up until that point, everything in my life that I'd set out to accomplish, I'd accomplished.
Okay.
And it's like, I love like SEAL training. I was like, dude, I got this. And it was just, I was having a blast out there.
And then that got stripped from you.
Yeah. And it was, at the end, it was like, I got a safety violation, and usually you get a couple safety violations. But the thing is too, back when I was at the Naval Academy, before our senior or first class year, there was some summer training called mini buds. And while I was at the academy, I'd started skydiving. And so I brought my parachute and stuff, and I had videotape of doing 50-way state record attempts in Delaware. We had like 3 airplanes trying to build a 50-way formation. And so I'd met some SEALs, and, they'd seen tape of me skydiving and knew that, they were hooking me up. So they were doing jumps down at Brown Airfield, like not tactical jumps where it was just like maintaining quals. So they were jumping down at Brown Airfield, and they're like, dude, we got extra parachutes. Like, come jump. And it's like, I knew they were hooking me up, and I was like, dude, this is amazing. This is like my dream. I'm like, getting to go skydive with SEALs. And, so I went down there and made 3 jumps free fall with the SEALs. And then, 10 days later, I was standing in front of the CO and XO of a SEAL team, and, got in trouble back at the academy. Yeah, it was a huge moment. It was also, and that's why it was really huge for me to even get a SEAL billet, because we had 52 guys competing for 15 SEAL slots from the Naval Academy that year.
Wow.
And so there was like an interview process, and, I ended up getting one of those 15 slots.
Wow.
It was a pretty intense interview, but
I imagine.
But yeah, so it's like I got out there, I got his stuff. Like, people knew who I was going through buds, and, everybody took their turn with the push-ups, making it hard, but there was no quit in me.
Yeah. And obviously you kind of look back at your life and you go, well, I got to this point and I was able to push through, probably from that tough upbringing that you had, right?
Yeah. To that, and it was I guess that's just part looking back. Like, there's the stuff you remember. there were so many great times with my dad and all the other stuff. And really, what was it coming from? It was just, he just wanted me to be at my best. He just wanted me to be at my potential.
Yeah. No, and that totally makes sense. Now, obviously, you go through this whole thing and then you get cut. You said 13 days from graduation?
Yeah, 13 days till graduation.
Wow.
I had orders out to a SEAL team, and it was just like that. And then I was lost.
Yeah. Yeah. So what did that do to your psyche? Like you'd mentioned you kind of went into a tailspin after that. Where were you headed after that?
Well, after that, I basically went to business school for the Navy. I did a tour on a boat, and then I got out. But it's just like in the Navy. So when you come out of the Naval Academy, there'll be like, say there's 400 people going to flight school. So you're still with a bunch of people, like as you move through, like with your year group along the path. We only had 15 guys going out to SEAL training, and that was split over, multiple buds classes. So even when you go out there, you're only with a handful of guys. And then like to get dropped, I was just alone. I'm like this odd ensign out, like I'm a year outside of my year group. So I'm just kind of like a stash ensign, getting bumped around places. I'm not with like everybody from the Naval Academy that went to supply school or business school for the Navy, like they'd already gone and graduated. So you're just kind of like this odd person out kind of feeling.
Right.
So it's like you go in place, but it's like you're not, when everybody goes to flight school, it's, 4 or 5 guys will get a house together and it's fun. But when you're, 14, 16 months out, like you're just kind of like by yourself looking for a 1-bedroom apartment.
Sure. No, and that totally makes sense. Yeah, because you don't have that, you weren't building that camaraderie from the get-go. Yeah,
and then like the camaraderie of the SEALs, I mean, that was what was amazing. Like, that group of guys and like the brotherhood, it really is. It's amazing. And then so it's like I didn't have a swim team. I didn't have that. I wasn't swimming. Like I didn't have an identity. I was Brooks the swimmer for so many years, and I was, swimming was done. So I was going to go trade in the identity and go be Brooks the badass Navy SEAL. That didn't happen. Then it was just like, who am I?
Yeah. So what was that journey like? I think a lot of people can kind of relate to that who am I type of positioning. Now, obviously, you have these extremes of like, insanely good swimmer, Navy SEAL training, and then who am I? But I think a lot of people kind of go through that. So what was the journey and the process like once you hit that point of like, oh crap, I don't know who I am, or where I'm going?
Yeah. And so that's just where, I mean, it really wasn't until my mid-30s, but it kind of repeating this process. Like I would start stuff and I would get to the end of it, but I wouldn't complete anything. Mm-hmm. I would like tail off and kind of like look for the next thing, or just this isn't really what I want to do. Nothing really sat right. I didn't have passion for anything. And it got to the point where, I'd have like little blips along the way. Like I had a business with a buddy of mine. We started out, we were going to do like high-end home security, but then we ended up finding a niche with the Hollywood studios. We were doing anti-piracy work, for like 3 or 4 years, traveling around, catching people that were pirating movies.
Wow.
So we were doing that for a while. And then literally that went to zero overnight, like around that 2008 timeframe when, the economy and stuff was taking a dive. So it's like if Jerry Bruckheimer needed $1 million for an explosion, like to produce a movie, like that was fine. But the entire group of people that we were working with the studios, the entire group got laid off.
Wow.
So it was like, great. So then it was like back down to this part. So there I was like in my mid-30s, and I finally got to the point where I put everything I owned. I moved out of my condo, put everything I owned in a 10 by 10 storage unit. And I was sleeping on an air mattress in my buddy's house that was getting foreclosed on.
So clearly a rock bottom moment in your mid-30s, being like, what the hell am I doing with my life?
Yeah, like here I am, like a Naval Academy graduate in Southern California, like just massive scarcity mindset. Like, how could I just make $3,000 a month? Like, I just like so negotiating on the bare minimum. Just in that place. And that was really the first time when I was like, all right, this isn't my dad's fault, the military's fault. Like, this is nobody's fault but me. And so that's when I had to really take a look in the mirror and start working on myself.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds like obviously you got to a point in your life where you were almost self-sabotaging. Like you're like, I was getting so close to completing so many things and I just stopped. And I think we live in a world of a ton of information being thrown our way, a ton of things being, wait, I'm going to see this course through and I'm going to connect to this group of people. And then, then you have that shiny object syndrome of this thing over here when you're trying to build something or trying to build your own life. Was it for you? Was it like self-sabotaging because you were afraid of success? Or do you think it was shiny object syndrome of the next good thing? And
it definitely, I'm definitely not the shiny object syndrome. And I wouldn't even really, that was just really myself at that point, as far as when I got into all the courses. So it's like, the first thing I did was a landmark course. I mean, I was $32,000 in credit card debt. I was on that air mattress. I mean, I had literally $5,000 to my name, but most of that was in retirement. That I couldn't even touch. That was in the military. So I really had 32 grand in credit card debt, less than $5,000 to my name. And, I took a decent chunk of what I had left and I started with doing some landmark stuff. And it's just like, and I guess here's the thing, looking back, like everybody will do stuff and it's like personal development's it's not a destination. It's not like climbing Everest. There's no flag you plant it like I'm there. Like it's a lifelong process, and each step just opens up the awareness for the next step. Because Because that's how people like you do. So it's like, oh, Carrie, I did Landmark, and like you feel awesome for a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden things start creeping back in. But the thing is, the things that start creeping back in, and this is something I've just really, really grasped within the last 6 months to a year, is really this concept of the ego. Because it's like we have this big set of awareness, we feel really good, but that ego is still coming back to keep us safe. I mean, the brain's designed to survive, not to thrive.
Mm.
And so that's really been the process. But, after Landmark, like I felt good. I start making these shifts. And then that's when I met, who's now my wife, Natalie Jill.
Right. So here you are and you're going through this thing of like getting massive highs, and then your ego kind of checks yourself. And I can even relate to this in my life of being like, I've had this success with, my podcast, and I have my live event, and I have all these things going on. And I even check myself. My ego comes back around and be like, who are you? Like, you're not deserving of this kind of deal. And I do feel like that kind of puts a ceiling on everything that I'm building. So what was that like for you? And when did you start to break through that ego?
I mean, it's not about really breaking through. It's really forming that relationship. But I would say it's taken another, 10 years since that point of continued work to really get to these realizations. So it's like, met Natalie at the time. She wasn't, she was basically working in medical device sales. Mm-hmm. I mean, she had a little website, but nothing, like nobody knew her for anything like they do today. And so basically started building that from scratch with her. And then that's when I started. It was cool, like, getting into the events and all that stuff. But in the end, it was still great. I could apply all that stuff. I was the person that was, implementing in a lot of that. But it's like, but I was doing it, but she was the face. Mm-hmm. In the sense that, like, yeah, the business was Natalie Jill Fitness. And then it wasn't until several years later, I was in another personal development type thing. And on Facebook, like, it used to say the invisible half at Natalie Jill Fitness.
Oh.
And they're like, because that's like, I thought of myself as invisible, as basically, and it just like hit me like upside the head like a 2x4.
Wow.
And so it's like, yeah, I had all this knowledge, and it was fine, building out and applying the stuff on the back end for her business. And that was the thing, like, the actual name of our company is 212 Marketing Video Production. And like we met, like I built a website for her. I was building websites. I know how to, shoot, edit, light, coach people on video. I was doing doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, doing video stuff years ago. And then it was just, Natalie Jill Fitness took off. So I was doing all that stuff for, started just focusing on her business. I wouldn't do it. And then for years, I didn't do anything for anybody else. It was just Natalie Jill Fitness, which was awesome. But then what's funny is did I ever get on the other side of the camera? No.
And actually, when I met Natalie, she's like, yeah, my husband Brooks does all this stuff. I had no idea.
Yeah, because it was great because I got to stay in hiding. I didn't get to be seen.
Yeah. So
it was the next iteration. Like so it's like, hey, cool. I found this place where I could totally function. But then like, that's the process of the years go by. And it's just like, wait a second. Like there's just that, I don't know if you call it like that soul calling, but it's like, I'm not living up to my potential.
Yeah. Was it a moment? Was it that moment of reading The Invisible Half, or was it before that or after that? Or what did that look like for you?
I think for that, I don't think I think that was like definitely a piece of it, but it really wasn't just like there was this, big aha moment. I think it was like a repetition of things. And I think so many times, like I'd sit in the audiences at events and I'd see people and I'm like, I could do that better. Like, God, like I could add so much value if I was the person on the stage, or like I'd watch videos and be like, yeah, like that's good, but they're missing this piece. But it's like, I never, like we had a big thing from the Naval Academy, which was the man in the arena, but it's like, I was never in the arena. Like I was when I was swimming, but then it's like, I got dropped from buds and I danced around it. Cause anytime I never put myself back in the arena.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're like, now it's time to step into my calling. So what was that moment like, and how have you been able to do that? I know you're working on a great program now called Service to Purpose. Is this your big stepping out onto the stage?
Yeah, this is the big thing. And really and that was the thing. It's like, even through that, like I've been coaching for over 2 years, but I also hid behind that, like I'm referral only. But it's not like I was referral only because I was making, $50 million a year. I didn't have any space. It was just, it was another way of the ego to keep me safe, because because the fear of putting yourself out there and, being vulnerable and being seen.
Yeah. And I get that. And we talked, before I hit record, I said to you, I'm like, I'm referral only pretty much. Like I have a website and stuff, but I don't talk too much about, what makes most of my money, which is the podcast production and coaching. And it's kind of an interesting thing. And even though I do put myself out there with this podcast, it's really, I'm shining a light on you as the guest or whoever is the guest at the moment. So what for you, like, was it a scary moment to be like, okay, I'm putting this out here. Here we go. Like, what was that whole internal process like?
Well, I think it was in that moment that I really grasped this concept of the ego and the comfort zone. Like growing up, like comfort zone, like swimming, like comfort zone. I mean, that's every day you're trying to push your comfort zone, faster intervals, more yardage. People think that comfort zone's getting up 30 minutes earlier, all this stuff. I mean, that's one sliver of an element of it. But when you see all the memes on Facebook and Instagram that everybody likes and shares and like talking about the comfort zone, I believe that most people haven't really truly experienced the comfort zone because, I mean, I've gone a week without sleep. I've gone a week without food. I've got 150 skydives. I've dove down to 150 feet in the ocean. Like there's all these things but that's still in a way it was in, I mean, it could be uncomfortable. It was still like in a comfort zone.
That would not be in a comfort zone for me.
But so here's the thing. When it came time to actually go on to video. So I'll tell you about, so the ego is designed to keep us safe. It was designed, and so I'll use myself example. My thing was I'm not worthy and I'm not good enough. So my ego's job is to protect me from being seen as not worthy and not good enough. And so that's why we procrastinate. That's why we don't take action. That's why we hide behind making it perfect, because if we actually put something out there, we could be seen as not good enough, not worthy. Everything roots back to some version of not good enough, not worthy, not lovable.
Right. What are people thinking? What if this fails? And it's like the whole...
Yeah, all that stuff. So here's the deal. So this is where I really grasped this concept, because it's like, using this video, I shot video for people, edited all this stuff for years, but then it was like time for me to go on video. It's like, oh, I'm going to get on video. And it's like, ooh, it's a little bit uncomfortable. Okay, I guess I need to go listen to these 3 podcasts, read these 2 books, do this course, and go to this thing. Okay, I did it. I'm all ready. I'm motivated. I'm pumped. I'm going to go do, oh, crap, it's still uncomfortable. I guess I got to go learn more to do this. Like if I learn enough that it's not going to be uncomfortable. And leading up to, I mean, this was literally, 3 months ago now. I did 45 days in a row of 10-minute videos on YouTube. And before that first video, I mean, I don't get sick, but it was literally, like, there was no more excuses. Like I knew in my head, there was no more excuses. There was no more courses. Like, my soul was like, dude, you've got to stop hiding. Like you got to do this. And I mean, that day when I did that video, I had diarrhea. I was vomiting. I was nauseous. Like I was in the fetal position crying. Like I was calling my accountability partners from a mastermind. I was calling one of my coaches. I'm like, what is this? He's like, brother, this is your ego. Because I don't get sick. I eat this. I'd eaten the same thing, and sure enough, like it's that level. It's like, because basically what was going to happen is you're going to go on YouTube and show the entire world how unworthy and how not good enough you are, and I'm going to keep you safe from that. And so at that point, it was going to use sickness to keep me safe.
That's so crazy. I mean, to think that our bodies kind of have that way of, I mean, it's trying to protect you. It's not, but it's trying to protect you, and it's doing all these things to stop you. But finally, you're able to do it. And like you said, you went out there and you did the 45 days of 10-minute videos. What was the result? What was it like for you internally?
Well, like even doing like that first video, I mean, literally, like I felt like I was flying afterwards. Like there's so much freedom on the other side of pushing through that fear. And the thing is, like, that fear is going to feel real. Like it can feel like a physical manifestation. Like it feels like you're in physical danger or harm. I mean, I've coached other people that were special forces combat pilots. I mean, they've been shot at multiple times, and they would rather be in that situation than stick their arm out, press their thumb down, and talk to their phone for 3 to 5 minutes.
Wow.
And people go, oh, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, it might not make sense for them, but that's the thing. There's something different for people.
Right.
And so that's, I see a lot of people out there say like, that's not their thing. Like everybody's got something, like even some of the people that are really big, that take massive action, for a lot of them, it's still the same root. It's still the same root of not worthiness, not good enough, but they just take massive actions. They just do so much stuff. But on the opposite side of that is that they can't stop. Because if they stop and they slow down, they have to deal with that thing that's sitting under the surface. Whereas the people like me, that thing, we stayed beneath that thing that's under the surface, and we let that thing hold us down because we used perfectionism, the procrastination. We didn't take action. And there's people on the other side, they're just go, 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 go. They go at 9,000 RPM, and they have all the external trappings of success. But until you deal with that under the surface, like you're not going to be at peace. Like that's where you get the burnout, or that's where you start getting, there's lots of ways that life shows up to teach people the lessons.
So what's the balance? Obviously you have these people who, like you said, they go and they get the massive results because they're taking massive action, but they have so much work to do. And then there's these people who are hiding under that. So what's the balance?
The balance is doing the work on yourself so you can get at peace with yourself. And I know that sounds like new agey or cheesy. And again, coming from the Naval Academy military guy, growing up, I was literally told to F my feelings.
Yeah.
Like logic is all that matters. Like we don't do feelings. And I think that's been that's the crux of it. We got to feel that, because again, I was using there's nothing wrong with a Lamborghini. There's people that have Lamborghinis, but if it's if the Lamborghini is just an extension of your self-worth, that's not going to fill the hole. So it's not going to change whether people take action. It's just going to change the place that you do stuff from. Because when you're aligned with your purpose, and I guess that's the thing. It's I never thought, but it's once you get in line with your purpose, once you really step into what your gifts are, you want to take action, but you're doing it from a place of being at peace versus oh my God, I got to keep this up. I got to keep doing more to be enough. Because you can't you can't outrun it. You're going to deal with this one way. You're either going to you're going to deal with it and you're going to build from a solid foundation because you haven't taken action. You've been in hiding, or at some point you're going to be holy cow, health challenge, life's not working, burnout. Okay, I need to take a step back.
So you're saying, look, we have to do this inner work in order to essentially find what our purpose truly is, and then we can live this life of balance.
Yeah. And some of the people, they might be kind of touching their purpose, but then it's there's just that place where someone's, they're aligned. It's congruent with who they are.
Yeah, totally.
Because I know there's times I've been in courses where it's I'm not even done with the course that I'm in, and the person's already on to selling the next one.
Yeah. Been there.
And it's just well, wait a second. Do you really care about us? Or is it I need X amount of launch, or I need X amount of sales? Is it just being a really, really successful box checker? Or is there more? I think, and eventually people get to the point where it's the connection piece. And then I think now you start really looking at the businesses that are truly succeeding. If you want to have a successful business, you have to have a good culture.
Right. And I love that you're talking about this and you're kind of bringing it to light, because there are a lot of those, okay, on to the next. And I think there's so much of that. I now question everything. I just got a message shortly before we hopped on this call, and it was talking about how I'm collecting a bunch of, influencers and high-end entrepreneurs who are really killing it to do a case study. In my head, I went, what are you trying to sell me? And so everything is really about okay, what's next? So what is service to purpose and what you're working on, and how are you helping people through this entire process?
So, this has been a work in progress, but, because originally being a military or a quote unquote service member, service members, helping them find their purpose. And it's just as I've gone through this process, it can really be any number of things that people have been serving others at the expense of themselves. I have talked to so many people, because I was definitely one of these people, I'll help anybody else, or I was helping tons of people for free, but we won't help ourselves. We can't change the world with an empty cup. And it's just another way the ego keeps us safe, because it's noble to help other people. Like, it's noble to do all this other stuff, but we got to help ourselves first. And then, serving that voice in the head, serving, the ego, serving the identity, and going from serving all that stuff to serving your purpose, serving your purpose, uncovering what your gifts are and getting uncomfortable to step into them so that you can share them.
I love that, because there's so much truth to understanding that we have to fill our cup first. And so often, and I was a victim of this for so long, was because I feel like I need to help everybody, and a lot of that probably comes from the demons that I brought into adulthood from childhood, right?
Totally.
Let me help everybody. It'll make me feel better. It'll make me feel better. This is great.
Yeah, because then I'll be enough. If I can help all these people, and everybody thinks that I'm enough, but that's the thing, we just get to be enough.
Yes. I love that, man. And so how are you helping people uncover this? Because that's a lot of work. That's a lot to do internally before we can help externally. How are you helping people with this? And
I guess that's the place that I really uncovered that was my gift. I mean, I was somebody, I didn't shed a tear for probably 24, 25 years.
Wow.
And if I had $1 for every time I just said, I'm fine, I'd be on that Forbes billionaire list. I was great at stuffing. I'm fine. I got this. And that was the thing. I was kind of one of those breakthrough junkies, the aha moments. I mean, people sit there on social media and it just makes me laugh, all the memes and people like and share and all this stuff. But it's a breakthrough is not a breakthrough unless there's emotion tied with it. Mm. And that's why we can see the same. We can know, because they say, oh, I already know that. I know that. I know that. I already know that. We walk around with a catalog of volume of information in our heads, but we're not feeling any of it. Yeah. And so that's helping people break in, which is break in so they can break through, so they can break free.
How were you able to start that process for yourself?
That's where it was the journey. And I guess, I think really the first time it was I've cried in front of hundreds of people, and I never thought it would have happened, but it's just when you start getting, the body keeps the score. Mm. And I call them those 1,000-pound invisible anchors. So to rewind a little bit, we were talking about earlier, when I grew up that way with my parents, I was a victim for a long time. And it was to the point where I didn't go home to see my family for almost 18 years. They weren't at our wedding. It was that, I just felt by putting the hand out, I'll just distance myself. Distance and hiding and avoiding was my go-to.
Yeah, you thought that was the answer.
Yeah, I thought that was the answer. And then there was a point, and it was August 2 years ago, where I was doing some personal development work, and we did an exercise that I thought was really powerful. And after that, I was just I get to go do this in real life.
What was that moment like?
It was huge. Well, I got to go do it in real life before my parents were gone. Because you see people that hold a grudge or I'll never. And I was just I might have had 6-pack abs. But I was tired of carrying around, I call them those 1,000-pound invisible anchors, that emotional weight. Mm-hmm. So I took 33 days. I drove 5,832 miles cross country and back. And unannounced, I showed up and knocked on the door at my parents' house.
Mm. I couldn't even imagine. What was their reaction when they saw you?
So I parked my car in the driveway, and I know because we had the little door. So I rang the doorbell and stood to the side because I know my dad would always look through the peephole. And I could hear my mom. I heard my mom go, "There's a nice car in the driveway." And then my dad opened the door. He saw me. And he just said, he's like, "Sylvia, I think it's for you." And she turned around, and it was just a 5-minute group hug. Just tears from everybody.
Was that the biggest weight that you were carrying? Was that such a healing process for you?
It was so healing. I spent 3.5 days. And what was cool is a little kid where I never owned my voice. I never stood up. My dad was always right. I would just always shut down. I would just shut down and weather the storm because it'll end. Same thing in the military. People can only yell at you for so long.
Right.
So like yelling at me, like not that my dad ever yelled, but like yelling at me, just, it never fazed me. Like my parents never yelled, they never fought, but just that like stern talking, like the quiet stern, but I just like, this lecture will end at some point. But yeah, but I went in there, we had like an amazing 3.5 days. Like I said, everything I wanted to say and share everything I wanted to share. And it's like in those 18 years, they had changed, I had changed. And it was just, it's funny. We just get these stories in our head. And that was the other thing I was trying to do too, like driving cross country by yourself. You got almost 3,000 miles one way. It's really easy to create a story in your head of like what it's going to look like. But my whole thing was like, I'm not creating any story. Like I'm not being attached to any result. I just want to go in there and basically, share my feelings and say what I have to say.
Yeah. And that's so powerful. And, being able to step up and face those things that we feel that are weighing us back is the hardest thing, but the most necessary thing for anybody to do, right?
I mean, it really is. And like, that's, because when I look at the bigger picture, like of this service first process, like the step one, we got to clean up. And like, this is the stuff we got to clean up. And one of those big steps is, forgiveness. And look, I'd done stuff before. I'd written letters. I'd done stuff like, I forgive you. Like, I don't feel better. I forgive you. I don't feel better. Like, you'll know, because you got to be like not 99.9, but you got to be like 100% ready to let it go.
Right.
And that requires taking 100% responsibility at what the meaning that we gave to the situation, and our own, letting go of all the blaming and victim, letting go of all that stuff.
So that moment that you were just sharing with us about, after 18 years going and seeing your parents and sharing your feelings, is that the birthplace of service to purpose, do you think?
I think that was a huge, that was just huge. I mean, it was so huge. I mean, I just felt, like if you can just really envision, again, yeah, I had, that was my thing, like the ego to stay safe, to stay worthy. I mean, yeah, I was sworn, but always to stay in great shape. Like, oh, I've got 6-pack abs. Like I had the look, I had a modeling agent, like I had all that stuff. Doesn't mean shit. It's just to try to like appear. I mean, I was like an empty shell of a person, but then it was just like, but I was lugging around this, I didn't carry my weight on the outside. I carried it on the inside.
Totally. No.
And it's like, you let that go and you start shifting, and it's like, because it's really easy in those traps when people are always looping in and they're always attracting the negative. And it's like, they don't understand, but then it's like, I mean, every single one of us is an expert at manifesting, because we've manifested exactly like where we're at in life. Because when I was on that air mattress, like if I could only make $3,000 a month scarcity, like I manifested exactly where I wanted. And it's through this process, like chances around, then I've also on the other side gotten to see, holy cow, like when you do the work on yourself, things turn around. And the thing is, things turn around quickly.
They really do. It's amazing. So why is it that you feel now it's your calling to now share this with people in this coaching program?
Because that was the thing for the longest time. It's like, you're in these, I'm in these, some of these group personal development programs, and there's people with like truly traumatic things in the sense of like, physical abuse, murders, people dying in car accidents, crazy stuff. And then it's like, I could make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? Or like, it was really, there's no divorce. So there's all these things. So I just kind of, hide back in the shadows. And I didn't think that anybody like, what's the story there? Like, fill in the blank for me. Second place is the first
loser.
Exactly. And so like, great. I was fourth in the nation. Like, not only does nobody care about who's second place, they only care about who's first. People want to hear from the Navy SEAL that got bin Laden. They want to hear from the guy with the combat stuff, not from the guy that like almost made it through training. So I had all these stories like, what can I be number one at? Because that's the only way to be good enough. But let's be honest, like to be like the only thing you can be number one at is being yourself.
That's so powerful. I literally got chills when you said that sentence, by the way, because there's nothing but truth to that.
But I mean, like you can go on, I did this, you can go on Wikipedia and you can type in like celebrity suicides. And this isn't just the United States. Like it has a list for the, starting the year 2000. I mean, you have supermodels actors, rock stars, billionaires, Olympians from all over the world. Like another platinum album, another 10 million in the bank. Like until you do the work and get at peace with yourself, like none of that stuff's going to fill the hole.
Mm. And it's such a great example too. And I mean, and even beyond the suicide, the drug use, the alcoholism, the things.
It's all. And the thing is, it's just like, and I used to not understand it, but like I have zero judgment because basically, like I never, like you'd hear about like multi-generational trauma, but it's like we only know, what we get from our parents.
Yeah.
Tony Robbins' kids have a different tool set when something comes up than somebody that grew up with alcoholic parents. But at the end, what they do, like if I drink this can, I feel better, even if only for a short period of time.
Yeah.
Like it's just a way to numb out. But how do we know? I mean, I numbed out all sorts of ways. I mean, there's Facebook, there's YouTube, there's binge watching stuff. There's, I would have 2 things to do. And in an 8-hour day, like I would find other stuff. Like I need to dust the shelves in the garage. I need to organize this junk drawer. Like it's crazy the stuff that we'll do to avoiding what we need to do.
So true. I mean, there's so much truth to everything that you're saying right now. And it's interesting that you bring up all these quote unquote successful people, meaning we see them and we put success on it. Right. And so one question I ask every single person I interview is, what is your definition of success? And what are 3 things you do every day to ensure that for yourself?
I think the biggest definition of success is, are you happy? I mean, because I've been around some people that have crazy financial success or whatever, and they're not happy. And I mean, to borrow from Tony Robbins, but, success without fulfillment's the ultimate failure.
Mm. So true.
And it's like, it's the little stuff. I mean, taking my boy Flops for a walk around the lake, and there's times like Natalie joins me. Like those are the little things that you can't put a price on.
Preface this with Flops is a dog.
Oh yeah, Flops is a dog. Yeah. Flops is my golden doodle, and he is, I kid around, like he's like a part person. I mean, he is my shadow. If I stay up till 3 a.m, he stays up with me. If I go upstairs, I'll be like, Flops, I'll come right back down. Like he's right there with me.
I love it.
Like he's awesome.
So for you, are those 3 things you do every day all self-care things?
Yeah. I mean, self-care is, it's paramount. I mean, little stuff. I did. And I guess what's really funny is when I look back at this stuff, because at the high level I was at that I was swimming, I was doing breath work. I was doing visualization. I was working with, it's been like 30 years. I forget their names, but at the time, like I was working with some top coaches of that stuff when I was like 10, 11, and 12.
Wow.
But then I just stopped applying it.
Yeah. Application's huge. Because you talk a lot about all this, like I'm going to absorb all this information, but if you don't put it to use, what's the point?
Yeah. And then like literally I stopped. I just started unsubscribing from all these emails. I'm like, dude, I'm never going to go back and read these things. But it was just clogging my inbox, and again, it's for me, I had so many podcasts, but it was inhibiting because I was like, oh crap. Because let's be honest, there's a new podcast that comes out every week.
All the time. Yeah.
And you're following like 20 people. Like, dude, I got news for you. You're never going to catch up. But that was the world I lived. So then I was like, well, look, here's a handful of podcasts. Now I just listen to the same things over and over, like a message that I need or that really lands. I listen to it over and over. So you get the repetition. It's just like going to the gym. You can't go to the gym and just do like, 1 rep. You can't do 1 rep of 50 different things.
Right. Yeah. And, it's funny. I have a friend actually who talks about podcast overwhelm and how you sit here and you listen to all this content and then, 1 week it's this and the next week it's that. And his podcast is in particular about health and fitness, but, all this stuff. And he literally tells people to unsubscribe and stop listening. Because look, if you're not taking action, there's no point. And that's such a huge thing to pay attention to is understand that look, I believe in finding what feels good and trying to figure out how that's going to work for you. And put in the time, because I was very much that person of like, oh, I tried it for 3 days and I'm done now. Right. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to learn how to play the guitar, but after 3 lessons, I wasn't good enough. So I stopped.
Yeah.
If I put in the work, I'd probably be a rock star now.
Right.
But I didn't put in the work and I signed up for the next thing. What's the next thing? What's actually at first it was drums, then it was bass guitar. And then it was something else, and there was always that next thing that hopefully I'll be good at right away.
Yeah.
And you have to put in the work and find out what works for you.
Well, and that was the iron. That was my other realization. Like I was really good at swimming, but oh yeah, I did that for 5 or 6 hours a day for the better part of 15, 16 years.
Right.
So why would I think that in business that like, it's like I was for a while, I was like searching, what's that thing I'm going to be as good at as I was at swimming. But it's like, yeah, like I'd try something for like a month. Well, I'm not as good as this as I was at swimming. It's like, well, dude, you put in like you logged easily your 10,000 hours in the pool.
Yeah, it takes time.
Yeah, it takes time, and that's the thing is like when you step into your gifts, when you get alignment with your purpose, like you're not rushing.
So true. You're just you enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Which I love.
Like if you get on the plane in LA and you know you're going to Maui, like are you like stressing out every second you're in the plane? No. You're like, it's going to take me 6 hours, but I'm going to end up in Maui.
Yeah. I just drove to Indiana, which was a 10.5-hour drive, and I was stressing the whole time because it's Indiana, not Maui.
But you knew where you were going.
Right, exactly.
Like if you just got in your car and like, oh crap, I got to drive for 10 hours. Where am I going to end up? Oh, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to go left. I'm going to go right. Oh my God. Yeah, it's nerve wracking.
I love that, man. And so, I love hearing this story and this journey of really trying to figure out the inward stuff so we can help with the outward stuff. And I think that is something everybody misses. We all try and get the outward stuff to help the inward stuff, if that makes sense.
Well, because everybody wants to figure out an emotional problem with their head, and you can't. I mean, I've coached people that are therapists that have PhDs, and the thing is like, they have this wound, but they've never allowed themselves to feel it. They tried to think their way through it. Like they can tell you all about how the emotions work and the chemicals, and like they can tell you like the science behind it, but all they really need to do is feel it. And I think that was the biggest thing is like emotions last for seconds to minutes. But the suffering is in the avoidance of suffering. The suffering is in the stuffing and the avoiding of the feeling, thinking it's going to last for forever. Like I've gotten emotional a couple times, but because I just allow myself to feel.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean like just because I feel, it's just like, I'm sure you've had somebody in your life that you care about that's passed away. Like you don't get one cry at the funeral and that's it, like never again. Like that's not how it works. Like, yeah, I've totally at peace, but just like going back to that time when I went back to my parents, like, yeah, that's emotional. Like, the connection that we had there, like, yeah, but in seconds to minutes, I get to experience those feelings and move on. And it's just like, it feels great when you can experience the range of emotions.
Mm-hmm. And that's so true. And obviously you don't know this part of my story, but my mom had passed away unexpectedly 4 years ago. And I hid from those feelings for a very, very long time. And I did that with alcohol and kind of ran and so on and so forth. And I had a coach who, she said, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, "I'm going out with friends, aka I'm going out to go drink my feelings away.
To go numb out."
Yeah. And she goes, "No, you're not." And she made me sit in what she calls sitting in my shit. And I sat in those feelings that evening, and it was the worst night of my life. But there was so much healing in feeling those emotions.
Yeah. And then now when you think about your mom, like, it's like, that's the thing. It's like people are so terrified of, like, if we go out to a restaurant, there's a table full of people laughing, like we don't bat an eye. But, if there's a couple people crying, it's like, people want to lose their minds.
Yeah. Like what's wrong with them, right?
And there's nothing, but like the freedom is in being able to experience and feel a range of emotions.
I love that, man.
And again, I get the military guys like, well, and I'm saying there's a time and a place too. I'm not saying that like if you're a first responder and you're in the military, and your buddy gets shot next to you, that you crumble right then and there. No, you finish, like you stay on mission. But once you get back to, home base, wherever it is, like at some point, like you get to carve out some time and you get to feel and process it. Because that's what people's ego will do as a way to like, oh no, because it's like, I'm not saying like right then and there that like, I'm not saying you just have this, complete loss and control of emotions, but there's a difference between that and actually being able to get in touch and feel your emotions.
So true, man. So I wrap up every single one of these interviews with the same question, but before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? How do they get involved with Service to Purpose? What's all the good stuff so they can start dealing with all this stuff so they can truly live in their purpose?
Basically the website, and again, this will be a perfect example for all the, the perfectionists out there. It's a work in progress. It's nothing special, but it's, done is better than perfected and never launched. But it's service2purpose.com, service2purpose.com. And then they can just reach out to me on Facebook, just Brooks Hollan. And then on Instagram, they can also search for Brooks Hollan, but it's Life of Brooksy with underscores.
Awesome.
And they'll see a bunch of Porsche pictures too. Specifically like classic air-cooled Porsches.
I love it, man. I love it. So guys, honestly, and it's funny, he goes, done is better than perfect, but I checked out the website. The simplicity is actually, in my opinion, is probably like genius.
And that's the thing. I've taken everything I've looked at, and I'm actually good friends with Frank Kern. I mean, I've done Thanksgiving at his house, and if you look at some of the top people, like they keep it simple. A lot of the complexity, it's because they're selling something. And I'm not saying that all the stuff can quote unquote work, but what you need to do is you need to find the tools that you need. Not you can go to Home Depot, they've got a ton of tools, but if all you need to do is like fix a faucet, you just need to get the 2 or 3 tools that you need to do it. And that's what I did. It's super simple because my thing is to get people on the phone so I can have a one-on-one, like real connection with them.
I love it. So guys, make sure you check out service2purpose.com. Now, Brooks, like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. And since this show is called The Growth Now Movement, that question is, in your life, what has been the biggest moment of growth for you?
There's been a couple. I definitely think the one going home and to really do the forgiveness to my parents was one. And then I also had one recently. I invested $50,000 in a mastermind. And part of that was there was a trip to Costa Rica, but it was around making sales calls and stuff like that. And I didn't really take advantage of it like I should have. And again, it was just my own stuff coming up. And I had some really, really tough and dark times that week and then the week after it. And that's what really got me to continue. Like, it's been a process, but this is like enough. Like, stop hiding. Like, these are the results. These are my results. There's absolutely nobody to blame but myself. And so it's like, I know, like, staring that face, I know what it's like to be in those extremely dark places where that voice is beating you up worse than Mike Tyson and Holyfield and Floyd Mayweather at the same time.
I love that, man. Dude, Brooks, I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your journey and really being open about the process in which not only what you went through in order to get to where you are today, but what other people need to get through, which is so insanely important, man. Just thank you so much for coming on and being you. This has been great.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.